So here's what we're going to be covering today. In the last webinar, we looked at the email benchmarks. So we're going to just do a really quick review on those and look at which ones you need to be watching and why they are important. Then we're also going to be doing a deep dive. I'm turning a little bit upside down because we're going to start off by looking at, well, how do we actually improve that those benchmarks? How do we make sure we're really getting our engagement up? Because as we see, if we focus on those benchmarks first and look at what they're telling us and what we need to do to kick off, the other stuff gets really easy after that. If we try to personalize before we've looked at those benchmarks, your life gets kind of complicated. So let's make it simple. We're then going to look at our audience preferences, and I know these things can get really confusing, so we're going to look at some ways to do that without breaking a sweat. And then we're going to finally look at some ways to hyper-personalize your content. And once we've got that happening, all of these things happening together in concert will basically start to really improve the lead generation that you're seeing coming through the Active Pipe system. I've also got some live examples because I get asked a lot of the time, well, what does an email campaign flow look like and all that sort of stuff. So I've got some really good examples in this webinar too to share with you. So let's just do a quick overview of email benchmarking. Now, Active Pipe, we've just recently produced the email benchmarking report, and it's based on 12 months of email data collected for Australia. We have a second report for New Zealand, so if you're a Kiwi, reach out and we'll share the link to the New Zealand report to you too with your numbers in it as well. In Australia, what we saw was 454 million emails go through our system across that 12 months of July 1 to June 30 last year. And we didn't care about who they were being sent to. We weren't trying to spy on anything. We just anonymized it and just looked at the number of emails that were going through to the system to see what was happening with them. What we found from that was that a typical agent in Australia has around 2,823 contacts in their database. Now, this is a bit of a magic number. We get asked all the time, what's the typical size of a real estate agent database? Per user in our system, it's just under 3,000 in Australia. And what we saw was that 68% of real estate agents here in Australia include property listings in their emails. Now that's perfect for many types of emails, but it also gives us the option to look at other types of content and when that would be suitable. And that's one of the topics that we're going to look at here. And it's different to what happens in the US, which is really interesting. The US are much more interested in more general topic. Their numbers are kind of flipped the other way. But what we also saw, and this is kind of like the golden number, was that the average number of leads that are discovered per user inside the Active Pipe system in Australia is around 34 leads a year. And depending on where you live, depending on what the median sales price in your area is, and depending on how much commission you're charging, but I think we worked out that that's around about $450,000 worth of commission at least. So that's a really important number. Now let's look at what those key benchmarks are and what you should be aiming for. Now, remembering these are averages across the whole system, and they're averages across every email that we saw. So we're not differentiating between an email campaign for buyers or an email campaign for sellers. And inside your system, different campaigns will have very different response rates. I've spoken to clients in the past from Active Pipe who have said things like, well, we have an investors newsletter and that has like a 60% open rate. That's an amazing email. That's an amazing open rate. But it only works for that client for investors. Their other emails are much lower. But you may find that you have certain campaigns and certain audiences that have really different numbers to this. With these average benchmarks, what you're looking to do is to just check in to say, well, if my numbers are a lot worse than this, I really need to take a good look at it. But really what I'm trying to do is do better than these numbers across to make sure that my campaigns are performing healthily. Because the better your numbers are around this, it means the easier the leads are flowing into your system. So our open rates, the number of emails that are being opened up once you've sent out a campaign. Now, remembering at the moment, you might have seen a spike in these numbers around that September, October period when Apple changed their privacy settings. And this number is from before that time. So if you notice that your open rates before September were sort of around this number, and then you got a big spike in later last year, I'm afraid that doesn't mean you're a hero. It means that we need to look at other benchmarks in a little bit more detail. And this is a really important one. So this is your click-through rate. So this is how much content inside your emails are being clicked upon. Now, obviously you need to have content in your emails that is worthy of being clicked upon. But what we see is that the average rate is 5.27%. So if you're getting a higher number than that, that's fantastic. And sometimes, again, some email campaigns, maybe you've got buyer email campaigns in a really hot market, you're going to find that number go up a lot because buyers are desperate to see what the latest properties are. And if you're including them in them, they're going to click through them. But click-through rates is 5.27 that you're aiming for. Now, your click-through to open rate, this is a better number to think. This is the number that is really important because it links the click-throughs to the open rates. Our open rate numbers at the moment are a little bit messy because of the changes to Apple privacy, but this click-through to open rate is telling you email is definitely going to a correct email address. Email is definitely being opened because the number of people clicking through is really is also starting to get quite high. So this is a really important number to keep an eye on. It means that the proportion of people clicking on things compared to of those that opened it means that those open rates are really valuable. And one that is often a bit frowned upon to talk upon, but unsubscribe rates. Now at ActivePipe, because we recognize disengagement and we will sort of park those contacts, our unsubscribe rate looks a little bit higher than general benchmarks, but you want to be lower than 1.9%. Let's face it, you want to keep those unsubscribes down if you can. It's okay if they're a little bit higher to what you're expecting because it's cleaning up your database, but that's what your unsubscribe rate should be. You don't want it any higher than that, absolutely not. We want to keep that one down as low as we can. So what do these rates really mean? Well, if you're higher than the averages that we're showing you here, that means that your emails are being more effective. And if they're being more effective, then that's making it easier for leads to be spotted in the emails that you're creating and to be coming through the ActivePipe system. All of those clicks, the clicks are really important because they are the intent signals and they're a precursor to leads. So what we're trying to do with our emails is turn them into, fabulously informative pieces of information that when a recipient looks forward to getting them, and once they get them, they want to explore that email and click on things in it because the system that sits inside ActivePipe is basically recognizing those clicks as intent and starting to rank and score them and surface them up to you through the dashboard. If you can start to work on improving these benchmarks, then that is going to start to result in more listings and in more leads and more listings. You can't have more listings with ordinary or terrible benchmark, email benchmarks. You need to, this is the work that you need to do in order to get that result. I'm sorry, there's no shortcuts. And what we saw from the system was based on those 34 leads a year and about a 2% commission rate and I think a median property price in Australia across the 12 months that we did it of around, I think, $600,000-700,000. That and property, not house, remember, so apartments brought the median down. We saw an average of around 446,000 in commissions per annum per agent in our system. Now, obviously, if you are in an area where your median sales price is a lot higher, then that number will be significantly higher for you. If if you're in a regional area and you don't have such a and your median is lower than that, it will be a little bit lower. So it's just a guide. And here's what we know. If we can use our benchmarks to really dive into what's going on in our emails, we can start to plug the parts of our business where leads might be leaking away. We can start to capture them. So getting all of this stuff right is really powerful and important. And here's how I want you to think about those benchmarks. They're literally hurdles that you have to jump over to get to the next hurdle to kind of clear it and get through to the winning line, which is where your leads and listings are coming from. So every time you clear the first hurdle, you can't get a better click-through rate if your open rate is poor. You can't get a better click-to-open rate if your open rate is poor. So even though our benchmarks are averages across all the emails that we saw in the system, they're still a great starting point to kind of to rank yourself on, and be really aware that different audiences and different email campaigns are going to have different benchmarks. So once you get a little comfortable with kind of applying the benchmarks to what's happening marketing generally, then then you become an advanced user and you can start to really refine, well, how do my buyer emails perform? How do my seller nurturing emails perform? How do my investor emails perform? So it's really important that you start to get to know your own personal benchmarks and you start to kind of monitor and manage them. Now, if anyone's got any questions as we go, please pop them into the chat or the questions, and we will have a little bit of time at the end. Now, how do you monitor how your benchmarks are going? We can see all of them in your dashboard. It's going to tell you the engagement levels that are coming out of your emails. You'll be able to see your open rates and your click-throughs. And most importantly, it's going to tell you exactly what is being clicked on in your emails the most. And once you start to get into the dashboard, it's actually going to be telling you who is clicking on. So this is actually helping you moving away from the sort of more anonymous side of email marketing towards the as a result of all this marketing, who do I now contact? Who do I pick up the phone to? Who do I prioritize? So it's really creating that link. And so what we want you to do is to use this information to examine and plan your current and future emails. So the more that you dive into, after you've sent an email out, the more that you dive into this dashboard and see how those emails went, what their performance was like, what was getting clicked on, the faster you can take that information back to your next campaign and start to create a virtual cycle. So let's do a bit of a deeper dive into engagement. How do we improve our open rates? So like remembering our open rate is our first hurdle. We've popped the email into their inbox and we want them to open it. Otherwise, nothing happens from here. The worst thing that can happen is that, well, the worst thing that can happen. The thing that we want to avoid happening or minimize happening is being completely ignored, although it happens a lot in email marketing. So first of all, I want you to check your subject lines. And that's the little bit at the top that's telling you, why you should open the email. Now, inside ActivePipe, there are generic subject lines in them. We're creating email templates that are being used by millions of agents around the world. Of course, they're going to be generic. But that doesn't mean you have to leave them like that. And I really suggest you don't. Make them short, make them descriptive, trying to make them enticing. A really great tip is to try and think like a headline writer in one of the big media organizations. Don't be too clever, but try and give them a reason to literally open it and see what's inside. So instead of saying, for example, your market update or, April month market update, think about, the insert suburb property market is on fire, or, a hot market with top sales, or something to really get people excited and motivated to open up. Segment your audience. Now, this is one of the most important things you can do to really amp up your leads. You need different emails and different types of email campaigns for different audiences. If you're starting out, then a monthly email that's going out to everyone on your database is a great place to start, but it is absolutely not the final destination. The more you do this, the more sophisticated you need to become. And once you do become sophisticated, you'll start to see better leads flowing through. So you need to make sure that you're not sending general information to all and sundry all the time, otherwise people will start to tune out. You basically want to amp up the appeal by making sure the content is really relevant. So what does that look like? It means that if I am a buyer of a 4-bedroom home, you're not sending me information about selling apartments. It's really sort of, sometimes it's just that simple. And another kind of pro tip is to test the time and the day of sending. Now, if your content's relevant, if you're segmenting, if you've got a really good subject line and you're still finding that it's a little bit sluggish in your open rates, then what you're looking to do is you need to test the time and day. There may be better times of the day or week when people are more open to receiving it. And that might be sort of after hours when they're sitting watching Netflix with a glass of wine, or it might be first thing in the morning. Test out different times and see which one works the best. Now, we also want to improve our click-throughs. So one of the most important things you can do for this is to make sure that your emails are really neat and tidy. So this is where they need to be on brand. They need to, there needs to be like a really easy flow. Like if your eye, when you're building it or when you're structuring it, if you're having trouble working out where it's got to go, probably your readers are going to find that too. So make it sure it's got a great sense of flow, and test, do some different tests from time to time, like try some short emails with just maybe one or two or three pieces of content. Try some longer emails with maybe 5 or 6 different kind of segments inside it. See which ones get the better response. And add really strong calls to action. So there's a couple of ways that you do this, like and I put this topic in because in the US we see that a lot of the agents are anxious about asking people to do things in their emails, but it's really important. You need to let them know that if they want to change their preferences, they should click here. Like if their journey has changed, if they're no longer looking to buy or sell and they want to just stay in touch with you less frequently, encourage them to do that. Let them know that if they click through the property, they'll be able to see the open times or see more information than they can just see in the little preview. Like really encourage them to click on things inside the email with sort of, buttons and things that are quite attention grabbing. And don't just say click here, say, download a report, download a market report, or, receive the latest property times, or what, make it really compelling. And review your content. So is it relevant and interesting enough? Or are you trying to cheat and sort of get out of it really quickly and, sort of get it done fast and not think about it too much? Because that is the best way to make sure that your emails become bland and boring. You nearly need to think like your audience and make the content about the information that they need and want to hear about. So, so that does require a little bit of work. It's work up front, but once you've done that, you can relax because it will start to go onto autopilot. But if you decide that you don't want to do that and you haven't got time and you're just going to go as you go, you will create more work for yourself more consistently. So I really encourage you to do some pre-planning. Now, reducing unsubscribes. So we don't want you to send the same email out to everyone because that gets old really quickly and it is a major turnoff. So you'll start to see, after you've sent 4 or 5 or 6, people will be like, oh, this is the same old, I'm really buying and it's just talking to me about selling, so I'm not interested in it. But we really want you to not cut corners and make life easier for yourself by putting your clients first. You can alter the campaign frequency. Just because you're getting unsubscribes on one type of campaign doesn't mean that they're going everywhere. It might be that you're just talking to your sellers or your potential sellers a little bit too often and they're not ready for that kind of commitment yet. So they want to stay in touch, but if you're talking to them every week, that might feel a little bit in their face. So maybe scale it back to once a fortnight or once every 4 weeks. Maybe consider tagging your clients differently, so that you have hot sellers who are ready to go now or who are ready to go really soon. And you have sort of warmish sellers or, orange amber sellers who are thinking about it, but are just needing a little bit more nurturing. And then you might have another tag, which is more sort of VIPs or locals who you just want to stay in contact with because you want to know when they're converting over, but they're people you've sold to in the past. And those guys just want to hear from you maybe once every couple of months or once a quarter. Don't get too in their face. And check your typing, because sometimes just email addresses can cause hard bounces and that can affect some of your rates. And make sure you clean up your data regularly. So one of the most common reasons that emails don't get through or that we see bad rates is just simply a misplaced letter or a forgotten letter or a stray full stop. So let's talk about tapping into the preferences of our audience. Where should we start? Well, the first place you should start is get permission from people and let them know why. Let them see the value and the purpose of subscribing to your email. Let them know that this is going to be good for them, that it's going to be valuable. Ask people, how would you like me to help you? Like, where are you at? What kind of, property is a big space. Like, are you looking to buy? Are you looking to sell? Are you just kind of, window shopping? Where's your head at? And be really upfront and ask them about that. Let them know that if they will share their email address with you, then you'll deliver them a personalized service based on the answer to that question. So if they're a buyer, you're not going to send them a whole lot of stuff trying to nurture them to sell. If they're a seller, you're not going to talk about first home buying with them. Make it all about them and wrap this up in a service conversation. Said it before, I'm going to say it again, think like your audience. So buyers and sellers, very different needs. And look, yes, you can niche down from there and have first home buyers and upsizers and downsizers and investors and all that stuff, but start with the simple stuff. One kind of email for sellers, one kind of email for buyers, until you get really sophisticated and comfortable with it, but definitely have different content for those two groups because their heads are in different spaces. And check in regularly. Now, inside ActivePipe, we have this fantastic survey option, which is a drag and drop module, which just asks people to let you know if where their head is at around property has changed. So they were looking to buy, they were receiving emails from you all the time as a buyer, but now they've purchased something and they're happy to stay in contact with you, but they don't want to receive weekly emails or every second day emails from you about buying. So that moves them into a new list. If they're looking to sell, let them flag that with you. Give them lots of opportunities to do that. Make sure you don't sort of forget to add that automation in because you think, oh, I did that sort of 6 emails ago. Make sure it's the option to change your preferences at any time is available inside your emails. Now, not everyone's going to do it, like they're not all going to jump in and immediately change their preferences. But the fact that those people who do it is a really good signal that they are a hot lead or that they are very engaged with you. And so they're a client for life. So audience preferences, like what do they want to know? Like we get asked this all the time. And last year we launched the Trust Report, which looked at the sort of information that made consumers trust their real estate agent. And I'm starting with buyers, even though I know that, you know, we really care about sellers, but at the moment, I think buyers are one of the easiest ways for us to both they're the easiest ways for us to automate what we're doing, which means that we're sort of practicing around how do we make this easier for ourselves. They're the hungriest ones around receiving our content because with the market being quite hot at the moment, it means that they're desperate for information. And so we can experiment really easily in this space and take the lessons that we're learning from buyers and then apply them to the sellers. So what we can see is that the newest list, so what buyers want is they are desperate to know for a leg up. If they subscribe to your email list, will you tell them when the newest property that suits their criteria hits the market? Can they get even a couple of days ahead of the pack because they subscribe to you rather than waiting to see it on the portal? They really want to know that, and they will open up an email that promises that. They really want things that are going to save them time. Like, think about it. You know, they're turning up to properties with, 10, 15, 100 other parties at the moment. So if something changes on when the property is open, if something changes around the price, if something changes around it being auctioned or negotiated, let them know straight away and let them see that email really easily inside, or let them see that information really easily inside their email. Save them time. Don't make them do 3 or 4 extra clicks or ring you to find out if the time has changed. Let them know that the email is a place where they'll be able to get that information. And they want information that's going to help them make better decisions. So especially at the moment, property is extremely expensive. There's big mortgages involved. There's a lot of competition to find something. There's anxiety that you might not find something that you like, that you really like. They just want some guidance around all of that space. And you can automate and you can create a process around that so that you're not personally advising every single buyer, because that will kill you. But we can set up really good structures in place to provide that level of service, which is self-service to buyers. And that can be really engaging inside your emails as well, and also give you insights into who's really ready to buy, and also give you insights into whether by being ready to buy, they're actually also thinking of selling their current home. And this starts to cross over because that information that's going to make them help them make better decisions is vitally important. It is one of the key things that helps build trust in real estate. And so sellers are also really keen from it. Now, it's always got a slightly different lens. They're obviously not in the market to buy. They're looking at, well, how do I make good selling decisions? Like, what do I need to do to sell my home? You know, should I be choosing auction or private treaty? What are the pros and cons of that? They want insights into the pros and cons of every decision that they're going to have to make. And the more pre-work that they do around that, when they come to talk to you, you know that they're really qualified and you know that they're ready to go. So we also see that sellers are very keen to understand how the market is performing. So they don't necessarily want to do that as a conversation that happens after they've let you inside the house to appraise it. They're curious to find out that information first, and then they will let you inside their house to see what that means for their property. And what we also know is that if you want to put property listings into seller emails, you can do that with a light touch, but it should be things that are examples of how the market's performing, great prices that were achieved. Don't just put into seller emails, oh, we sold a house, because, really, seriously, you sold a house, that's amazing. You're a real estate agent, that's what you're supposed to do. What sellers want to know is how much did that house up the road go for? And don't make me call you. If I've given you my email address, share it with me in the email, so I can see, I can find that out for myself. And then the more I click on those sorts of things, the more you know that I am ready to rock and roll. Any questions so far? Oh, I can see one popping up. Downsize is not involved RE anymore. Okay, so how do we avoid breaking a sweat? Because we're talking about personalizing, we're talking about segmenting, we're talking about an awful lot of things to do. So first of all, don't panic. We're going to break this down. We need to plan our campaigns in advance. And look, I really recommend that, you grab a couple of your team and sit in a room with phones turned off and a whiteboard and maybe a pizza, and do this as a bit of a creative exercise together. And you need to sort of draw, and I'll show you, we're going to draw little kind of circles and lines, but you need to write up the introductory text to the key campaign. So we've got a buyer campaign, we've got a seller campaign. What do we want to say in the first email? What are we going to say in the second email? What does the third one kind of look like? How often are we going to send them? And just come up with a framework for what your seller campaign looks like, what your buyer campaign looks like. It'll bend your head the first time you do it, but it'll only do it once. And once you've got it done, you can relax. If you, like we said before, if you decide that you don't want to do it, you just want to set up your emails every single month, that creates a lot more work for you in the long term. So I really recommend that you take a little bit of time at the start. And the Active Pipe success coaches are more than happy to help you with this. Use the automation. It's there to make your life easy. So personalize the language, but yes, let the automations be set up for you inside Active Pipe, because they have been designed to make your life easier. And once you've sort of got the framework and the guidelines set up, you can be really rest assured that those automations are basically responding. So what do the automations do? If I fill in that little survey form and I say that I am in the market to buy a 4-bedroom home between a price bracket of 850,000 and 1.1 million, then every time you list a property inside your system that matches my criteria, if I have subscribed to that thing, it will send me the emails that you have decided are going to go out to buyers. All of the properties inside my emails will feature properties that look, 4-bedroom homes that are in that price bracket. That's a fantastic service, because now I'm not looking at all the things that I'm not interested in. It's just really delivering me that personalized content. And schedule regular reviews. So yep, we've got a project at the start to get stuck in and make this work for us. And then really what we need to do, like maybe you want to test it, check in once a month while you're getting started and up and running. But once you've done that, it really just sort of needs a quarterly review just to make sure that you're happy with the language in it, make any adjustments for winter or spring or Christmas or things like that. But if you just set some regular reviews, there's two things going on. You've got time in your diary and in your head that you know that you're paying attention to this and it's going to get looked after, so you don't have to be anxious about it or worry about it. And also you know that it's working, like the process is set in place and is growing the leads coming into your business in the meantime. And how do we hyper personalize our content? personalize those subject lines. So we talked before about making them really interesting and exciting. Did you know you can actually personalize them too with the first name of the recipient or the suburb that they cover, or even your company name? Don't know if I really recommend going with the company name because it's all about the audience, not about you, remember? But you can insert, so you can say, hey, Kylie, here's how the Balmain property market is performing. It's probably a bit of a long one, but let's, how is Balmain property performing, Kylie? Question mark. And that's going to get you a higher open rate than just a market update for April. Really share content that is reflecting their mindset. So you've got first home buyers, upsizers, downsizers, and investors. They've all got different needs and even though a lot of their questions are the same, they have a different lens on them all. So share content that is relevant to those audiences based on the preferences that they've shared with you or the tags that you've indicated from information that you've got about those clients. You could share content that's based on their location. So if they've said that they're in Balmain, or if they're in Richmond in New South Wales, or Brisbane, then basically you can just share information that is about the suburbs that they're interested in and their local area. And like I talked about before, just share the properties that are of interest to them. Now, you don't have to personally filter and groom all of those. If they've set up in their survey preferences, like really encourage them, say, if you do this, this is how it works. I'm only then going to send you properties that are completely relevant to you. Most people will completely sign up for that because we're looking for things that save us time and save us, needing to filter through everything. So we love it when you curate those experiences for us. And inside ActivePipe, we do have content that is designed to make your life easier, and that could be dragged and dropped really quickly into emails or be set up to select content really quickly. So we've got our local suburb market updates in our market insights. We've got evergreen articles, and we now have over 1,000 articles across Australia, the US and New Zealand, and the majority of those are Australia. There's over 500 of those are in Australia, that are based on questions that you most commonly get asked. And they can be general, they can be really specific, and there are a few sort of more what's happening in the market styled ones. And we see, and definitely the content that is around properties that are matched to preferences, looking at that, at how the survey works. So make it really easy for yourself by identifying stories that you think tell your story for your email campaigns and sliding them in. So now let's have a look at some great campaigning. Here are the most common email campaigns. Now, if all you do is set up a separate campaign for buyers and sellers, I'm going to take that for the win. That is a gold star to you if you're starting out. But here are some, once you start to get a little bit more sophisticated, here's where you need to be starting to get to, and feel free to run with it from here. But we want buyer service campaigns. So these are our services for our buyers. They're going to include things like a market update. They're going to include the latest listings. They're going to also include any off-market properties. Buyers love them because they feel like they're getting like a real win. And you can send them weekly or on demand. You might decide to send them on a Monday as a sales wrap, and then a Thursday as a prepare the weekend opens, however you want to do it. Market updates. So these market updates might be like for your VIPs or past clients or anyone who you're not sure about yet. So they are sort of a general overview on how the property market's performing. It's more of a catch-all general campaign, and it's got general appeal. But you would also definitely include your top sales with the price in them. And you might decide just to deliver that once a month or even once a quarter. That's up to you. Seller nurturing, really important. And this is where we're going to start to see our leads really coming through. But if you're doing these other things, then you're really extending the runway of leads that are starting to come in by offering that incredible service. So our seller nurturing, again, market updates, really important and powerful. Advice and tips and tricks, like how, is now safe to sell? Is it, should I sell now with there's not a lot of property on the market? Like lots of questions at the moment around whether it's a good time to. Lots of common questions around the techniques and the different choices that you have to make when you sell. lots of questions and answered around how to get the most for your property, mistakes to avoid, tips and tricks, all of that sort of stuff. Definitely share top recent sales. People love to see them, and it instills confidence in you as an agent. And while depending on whether they are green, amber, or otherwise they'll be in your market updates group, that will determine the timing of that campaign. You might have a weekly seller campaign for people that you think are hot to trot, but you haven't been able to get them on the phone. You might have something that's a little bit less frequent, monthly or fortnightly, for amber contacts. And then property management. Don't forget your property, your renters and your especially renters. You can talk about, and investors, but you about rental performance, is there any legislation updates, and look, just a quarterly delivery can be enough to talk about that, but it can still be a highly engaged email, and about how rents are performing, especially because that way, if you've got to run a rent review through a whole bunch of tenants, they don't feel like that you're picking on them. You've actually flagged that this is what's going on with rents at the moment, and so they understand the context of the one-to-one conversation that you then have with them afterwards. So let's talk about some examples of campaigns. Now, these are really basic, but it's just to help you visualize what kind of thing you might be setting up. First of all, let's imagine that you've got a buyer who inquires. Now, maybe that inquiry comes through the website, maybe it comes through realestate.com or domain, maybe it comes at an open for inspection, but as a result of that inquiry, you've got a name and an email address. The first thing you want to set up, and you can automate this, you don't have to personally email everybody, but you can set up a welcome email that says, hey, we're so excited that you're looking for a property. Like, let us know, we'd love to help you find your dream property. Fill in this, like, to make sure we deliver a better service to you, please fill in this survey so that we can, send you only the properties that are going to match your criteria. Now, most people will fill in that survey, or a good proportion of people will fill that in. And once they do, you might have a campaign structure that looks like this. This is not put in stone. It depends on how your business operates and your preferences. But every Monday morning, you might send them a sales wrap, talk about how did the weekend market perform? What were the auction results? What sold? What was bidding like? Or even just like, here are the properties that sold and the prices that they achieved. Just send them that quick wrap and update. On Thursday, you might also give them their preparing for the weekend kind of open for inspection overview. So this is all the properties that you've got opening up this weekend, the times that they open, things like that. Now, if they've filled in their survey and you've got property price preferences, this email itself can be set up so that it's only showing them the properties that match that criteria, and maybe a little bit either side if there's not much in that space. But that can be set up so that it's personalized, but it still goes out every Thursday because that's when you've decided that you do that. And in the meantime, you might have like an on-demand preference match that says, well, if we list a property this week that absolutely is spot on for you as a client, you're going to get a ping about that straight away. Now, hopefully by that stage, after that's been running for a while, they'll have successfully purchased and they'll sign up to your, and they will stay in contact with you. If you offer them that week welcome email and the survey and they didn't fill it in and you're not really sure where their heads are at, you would both probably have that, our market update email, which is our general hold all campaign. And that's where we're going to keep putting people in. Now, in that email campaign, in this market update campaign, always make sure you've got your survey in there, or you're driving people back to that survey, because that's what's going to let you know that they move from being a passive reader of your email to starting to become a lead. So that's an example of a really basic way to set up your buyer campaigns. Now, inside each of these campaigns, you would have, a subject line that matches, that works for each type. You'd have a really nice looking email, and you'd have text that really spoke to that audience. And then you have the elements that are customizing, are making it personal. So adjust and repeat. Now, if you start to get really sophisticated, once you're feeling really comfortable with this, you might then decide, okay, you know what, we're going to have a different kind of email campaign that goes to people once we know that they're first home buyers, or if they identify as a first home buyer, or we might have a different campaign content, like the text inside the emails is going to read slightly differently for investors or upsizers. So once you sort of feel like you've got this down, you can really start to practice on, you can start to go in more detail. Let's keep pushing on. So now this is a very basic example of a seller drip campaign. So these are for what I'm calling our amber sellers. So we've got a seller signal. Maybe they've rung up to, they've told you at an open for inspection that they're not ready to act yet, but they're just kind of curious about how much this property is going to sell for, because, you know, they live up the road and they've been in the house for about 20 years and they've been thinking of moving to Queensland or whatever they've told you. So again, you would send them, you would send them a welcome email, or you basically with the survey in it again, asking them to, you know, how can you help them, like fill in this survey so that we can customize our the information that we deliver to them. And if they say yes, yep, they're up for that, then that's a signal. Now, you might want to do this monthly. You might want to start out fortnightly and see what their engagement levels are. And you might want to start to include things, a content-based email, which is talking about why now is a great time to sell, some articles, why now is a great time to sell, and what's the market doing. And here's some examples of some recent sales that were really strong. Alternatively, you might want to make that a monthly one, depending on how hot you think they really are. But you would definitely want to be having that set up with the automations based on what they're clicking on. So with this fortnightly seller one, you might send them an email for two or three, you know, for 2 or 3 week groups of fortnights. But if they haven't clicked on anything, you can set up a signal to say, look, if they haven't clicked on anything in that fortnightly, send them back to a monthly review. I kind of feel like I might be giving them a bit too much. I'm going to scale it back a little bit. That's up to you to set up those parameters. Now, what we're aiming for, what our goal is to go and appraise that property. So based on their clicks, if they're clicking a lot, then we're going to notice that they're a hot lead and we're going to start to go out to an appraisal. If they're not clicking on a lot, we might either take them back to fortnightly or take them back to sort of a more monthly one. Or if they don't fill in the content, we're going to basically put them in our catch-all campaign. So does that make sense? I'm just going to check. Oh, all good. Okay. So how do we plan to succeed in this space? Like I said at the start, we really need to plan to succeed. If we don't set up a plan, then we're planning to fail, basically. So put time in your calendar to plan your campaigns, because the more work that you do at the start and putting that time and energy, maybe getting a bit of help from the success team to get started and up and running, that will make your life a lot easier and reduce your stress as you go forward. It will reduce the work that you need to do every month or every week as a result. Do review all your individual campaigns. So those benchmarks that we talked about at the start, they are average numbers across, you know, millions of campaigns that have gone through our system. Your own numbers will probably be different, and you will see differences in different campaigns that you send out. So make sure that you check all of your campaigns against the benchmarks, and then start to basically log or record what your benchmarks are, so that you can know what you need to do to improve on your own numbers. Because again, remember, when we get this stuff right, we're plugging the leaks for how leads fall out of our system, and we're basically streamlining them into our dashboard so that we're not missing any. And develop a routine. So again, we've got time in the calendar to kick us off, and then once a month for the first 3 months, but then after that, once a quarter. We're basically just taking some time together as a team to check in on our emails and make sure that we're happy with the language, with the wording. Do we need to refresh it because it's winter now, not summer? We've got, you know, Easter coming up. Do we want to sort of personalize them to make them a little bit Eastery? Just think of things like that. But if you've got time in the calendar, you don't have to put any energy into worrying about has it been done yet. You know that it's going to get handled as a matter of course. And we love a good process at ActivePipe. So that's pretty much it from me. I'm sort of almost bang on time, but if anyone's got questions, we'd love to help you at ActivePipe. You can read lots more about the dashboard and the things that it's showing you through our library of content. We've got the real estate content and market insights products, please ask your success manager to show you them if you haven't seen them already. If you're not sure who your success manager is, email success@activepipe. And our support team is awesome, and they can help you out with building some of your automations. And we have got some great webinars to review some of these topics in more deep dive. So I've included all of that in our resources section, and we'll be sending you out this, this deck as well as part of the follow-up.